Hi, everyone. Wow. It looks like more people from the stage than it does from one of the seats. So I'm really excited to be here today talking to everyone. It's really an honor. And it's actually my first time to Australia, which is super exciting. But the thing that might be even more novel to me is the fact that I'm staying in a hotel. And it's actually the first time I've done that in 3 years. So it's pretty exciting. But it's funny, not having stayed in a hotel for 3 years, you notice things that you probably don't notice. For a lot of you, probably travel a lot for business and stay in hotels all the time. I don't. So I walked into the bathroom, and I swear there are 20 towels in the bathroom. And I was like, 20 towels? Who needs 20 towels for 4 days? But anyways, there's some interesting things. There's also a lot of outlets that you pick up on when you're not used to staying at a hotel. Anyways, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we designed our candidate experience at Airbnb. Everybody knows that candidate experience is important, or good candidate experience, right? Nobody gives bad candidate experience on purpose. But we don't often hear about what defines a good candidate experience, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we did that. But I do think that candidate experience is very linked to your brand. And so first, I want to tell you a little bit about our story and just give you an insight into how we perceive our brand at Airbnb. And first of all, how many people have heard of Airbnb? It's a lot more than it would have been a year ago. Whoa, okay, so I'm going to make this brief. That's most people in the room. Airbnb began by solving a problem. So 2 of our founders were entrepreneurs. They just moved out to San Francisco from the East Coast. And they rented this apartment. And as time went on, being entrepreneurs which as some of you guys might know, is another name for being unemployed, but with big ideas. They started to run out of money for rent. So they saw there was a big design conference coming to town, and there was a lot of publicity in the press around the fact that all of the hotels were sold out. And they thought, we've got this great apartment. What if we put an air mattress right in the middle of that room? And we put it up on Craigslist, the online classifieds. So they did it. They thought they'd try. They put it up. I think the price tag was like $60. And overnight, they got 300 inquiries for their air mattress on their floor. So they thought, I think we have something here. And they called their friend Nate, who lived on the East Coast, and they said, Nate was a programmer. They said, can you whip up a quick website? And this is our first website, which is really fun. People always ask, why is it called Airbnb? Well, it used to be Air, Bed, and Breakfast. You can see that with the fun, very kind of like junior font. They whipped up this website, and they quickly started booking this airbed over and over. People would come and stay with them. And what they discovered is that it wasn't just, the experience was more than just sleeping on an air mattress in a slightly messy apartment with 2, just post-college grad guys. They found that the people who came and stayed with them got the experience of going to their favorite coffee shop, or going to the place where they both went, they loved to go for tacos, or meeting their friends. So they really got a local experience of San Francisco. And that was the special thing that made them decide that that was their big idea. So from that one apartment, Rausch Street in San Francisco, we've grown. And now we're about 1 million listings worldwide. The thing that's bigger, though, than the number of listings we have is really our vision. We believe that we're going to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. We want people to be able to go to any city in the world and feel like locals. And we're really about connecting people in the real world. I'm going to show you a short video that we launched last year when we did our brand relaunch that kind of explains what our logo is, which you'll see. And it really gives you the feeling of what our brand projects. So does anyone have a really warm, fuzzy feeling right now? Yeah, right? So imagine you see that video, and then you apply for a job on that website, and you have a terrible candidate experience. It's pretty much the antithesis of what our brand projects, right? Well, a few years ago at Airbnb, that could very well have been the case. This is a little bit of our growth trajectory, and my story starts right about here. I joined Airbnb at the beginning of 2012. We didn't know what was ahead of us. At that time, we felt like, maybe we were already reaching the top. And there were a lot of things going well for us. We had a great product. We had a platform built on trust. We were pioneering the sharing economy, which now is kind of a normal word, but back then nobody had heard of. And people were actually applying in droves. And so it was really exciting, but we didn't have the infrastructure to handle it. So people would apply, and they would wait and wait and wait. We had a terrible candidate experience. And how did I know? Well, I get emails like this. So this is a candidate. This is one of the first emails in my inbox when I started. Dear Jill, I signed a contract for another company tonight. I would have loved to be a part of your team, but after around about 1.5 months with 1 interview in person, 3 interviews via Skype, 3 references, and no decision from your side, I needed to make a decision for myself. Sylvia. It's pretty much that's a snapshot of bad candidate experience right there. And this is someone we actually wanted to hire. This is someone who went through the whole process, and we just literally couldn't get it together to make it happen. And it wasn't because we were bad people or we didn't care. We cared a lot. But we just had this small, scrappy team, and we didn't have the infrastructure to handle the volume. So candidates waited and waited and waited. This was the entire recruiting team at this point. This is actually, I haven't seen it on the big screen. It's really embarrassing how messy the desk is. This isn't how our office normally works. But anyways, ignore the desk. What I find interesting about this picture is right here. That's me. I look very calm and collected and happy. When in reality, how I remember that time is more like this. So I feel an affinity for this little girl. It's she showed up in her party dress. She was going to go for a fun run through the sprinklers, maybe. And then all of a sudden, she's getting a fire hose full force in her face. For me, it was very similar. I just landed my dream job at my dream company in a product that I loved. And it was just a little bit too much to handle. Luckily, at that point, there was a lot of work being done on another kind of experience within Airbnb, the user experience. So if you've ever used Airbnb, you know that if you've ever been on the site, we're obsessed with the user experience. And so anyways, our founders had come back from vacation. They went away for, I think, the first time since they started the company, really energized around mapping out the entire guest and host experience. So our customers are made up of hosts and guests. So they basically used a storyboarding technique. These are the actual storyboards from the host experience. And they mapped out all of the critical points within the host journey. There were some real parallels between the candidate experience and the customer experience. But at that moment, we were a little bit too heads down to see it. Luckily, somebody did. This is Joe Gebbia. He's our chief product officer and one of the guys with the apartment from earlier. So Joe came to me one day, and he's the sweetest guy, very thoughtful, incredibly intelligent. And he comes up to me and he goes, Jill, have you thought at all about how you're going to design your candidate experience? And I was like, no, Joe, I haven't thought about that. And he was like, don't worry, I'm here to help. I want to join the recruiting team and help you guys design your candidate experience. So with that, Joe joined the recruiting team for the next 6 months. And we did the storyboarding exercise for the candidate experience, mapping out the entire journey from discovery, frame by frame, to either offer or rejection. So this is we did tons of Post-its, mapped every single stage and frame along the way. The 3 principles that we used to storyboard were, first, define critical moments that are universal. So we were looking for the things that were in common for all candidate experience worldwide. So, it didn't matter if somebody was presentation designer or a customer experience person, everybody had some kind of phone screen. Everybody had some kind of on-site interview. Everyone had some stage, whether it's an active or a passive candidate, in which they discovered Airbnb. So we really defined each of the critical moments. The next thing we did was not let reality get in the way. And this is where Joe really came in. Now, at Airbnb, we've always done things that don't scale and not really let that get in our way. And he really encouraged us to do that through this process. So there was one woman who I remember, every time we talked about kind of what our ideal state would be, she'd say, well, the pain point with that is there's too much volume, or the pain point is we don't have the people, or it's too much time, or the interview team's never going to do that. And he said, OK, till the end of this process, I don't want to hear pain point. I don't want to talk about pain points. I don't want to talk about obstacles. I want to talk about what the ideal state looks like, because if we don't know that, then we don't have a goal. So we never let reality get in the way. And then the third thing really was being true to the candidate. Should come up in a second. Being true to the candidate. So this is a principle from user experience, right? You really put yourself in the shoes of the user. For recruiters, I think it's hard because we're so used to our process and we're so used to kind of our preconceived notions of what candidates want or kind of just how it goes. So this was really great. We figured we needed to see the experience through the candidate's eyes. So the next step that we did was a round of user insights. We did this in a couple ways. One of the benefits of being at a company in hypergrowth is that at any point in time, you usually have about 20 to 30 people in the building, or now maybe more like 50, who are really new and just went through the candidate process. So at first, we started by just grabbing people who looked lost, because those were generally the new people, and pulling them into an interview room and asking them about their experience. But then we got a little more thoughtful around it. And in the lunchroom at Airbnb, we set up kind of a booth, and we put out our candidate journey, all the frames, and we gave people red Post-its and green Post-its. And we had them write on the Post-its, on the red ones, things that hadn't gone right in their candidate experience, or things they didn't enjoy. On the green Post-its, we had them put up, moments that they enjoyed, things that really went right. There was a lot of red. It was the green, I remember if you looked at it, they had the whole journey. On the right-hand side was where people got their offers, and that was all green. But everything else was a lot of red. So we learned a lot that way. And the second thing we did was go out, or actually just go online, and the whole recruiting team applied for a bunch of different jobs with other companies. So we applied to big companies, we did the Coca-Colas of the world, and small startups that were really in our same space. And we did this in order to see what it was like to actually go through the application process, and also what the communication was like from these companies. And we learned a ton from that. It sounds really simple. It's something that you can do and go home and do with your team in an hour or 2 hours. But we learned so much about the impact of the communication that you get back from these companies. So a couple things that we learned from that exercise is setting expectations often. There were some companies that we reached out and applied to that were really good about setting expectations. I remember TiVo in particular. They had this great FAQ that the automatic application received email pointed to this FAQ. It gave you all this information. It really set your expectations for how long it was going to be until you heard from them. And then they followed up regularly at a really good cadence. We also heard from candidates, obviously, that this is a really important thing. Maximize what makes you different. So this was something interesting that we learned through that lunchroom exercise. As with any fast-growing company, we were constantly running out of interview rooms. So we had people interview often out in the open. We still do this because we never have enough interview rooms, as I'm sure is the case with a lot of you. So we had people interview out in the open, and we were always so embarrassed. We were like, oh, this is the worst candidate experience, and super apologetic to all of the candidates. I'm so sorry. I know this is really awkward. But what we heard from people was they actually loved being out among the employees and really seeing what Airbnb was all about. So it was really interesting. That was one of the insights, and we use it to this day. Our culture is probably our biggest selling point for people. And when they felt like if they were interviewing or having lunch outside with the team, they really got to see Airbnb and people interacting and really understand the culture. And then we didn't have to do any selling of it because they understood it. The third thing is use your brand voice. When we did that exercise of going out and applying to all these different jobs, it turned out a lot of the companies use the stock rejection template and application received template that they got with their ATS. And we did too. And it's the exact same template. So if you apply to 5 jobs, you're getting the exact same response. You might as well say, dear insert name here. You're not a fit, sorry. It felt really bad to get the exact same email back from multiple different companies. So we spent a lot of time redoing our templates, and we don't have a recruiting marketing team. We don't get really resources for marketing at all. So it's actually the coordinators who do this. Periodically, they update the templates. They know our brand voice from spending a lot of time on the site, and they update it using our brand voice. And the last thing is rejections are as important as offers. And Pat alluded to this earlier as well. You're going to reject far more people than you ever make an offer to. And this is a really key point that I'll circle back to at the end of the presentation. But I am so glad that we learned how to reject people gracefully and respectfully early on. It's been huge for us. And I think that, actually, funny aside, we do these things, it's called an air share, where an employee from the company will teach other employees something that doesn't have anything to do with work. So it could be like Bollywood dancing or cooking. And we actually got a request that the recruiters, we have a pretty young population, and a lot of people are online dating. So we got a request that the recruiters teach a rejection for online dating course. And it was so well attended. The room looked like this. It was really well attended. And it was one of the most popular, highest rated air shares we've ever done. So I thought that was a good testament to the recruiters. Anyways, at the end, the wall of Post-its that we did evolved into this. So this is kind of our outline of the candidate journey. As you can see, there is, for each frame, there's the story, there's know and feel. So we didn't talk about, here's the checklist of what you do at each frame in the journey. You have to do A, B, C, D, E. We talked about what do we want candidates to know and feel at each step along the way. And that's the outcome that we want. And so it's up to recruiters to figure out, with their individual candidate, with their individual hiring team, how to achieve that goal at each step along the way. So it might look very different for a junior candidate or a senior candidate or a passive candidate. But as long as you achieve that outcome of having them know or feel the way that we've put out, then that's success. The other thing that we have is in the journey on the bottom half, you can see it's everybody's roles. So everybody knows exactly kind of what their responsibility is. We have the recruiter, sourcer, coordinator, the hiring team, because they play a big part in this, talent partners, which are HRBPs. What does rejection look like? We really spell it out at each stage. And then the timeline. What's the SLA for that stage in the process? So as you all know, just because you print something out pretty and you put it up on a wall doesn't make it necessarily true or necessarily happen. So once we had defined what our candidate experience would be, we had to bring the rest of the company along. So one of the biggest things that we did and the biggest learnings we had was, as I said, they had just used storyboarding to define our user experience. So there was a big company meeting basically launching the storyboarding of the user experience. And we actually went, and the week after, at the next company meeting, we launched the candidate experience. So we weren't using recruiting terms, we were using really the same terms that they had used, that the business really already understood, and it really resonated with people. And the second thing we did, really, this is the slide that changed it all for us. This isn't the slide that changed it all for us. Oh, hang on. Not that one either. So this is the slide that changed it all for us. And this is actually the original slide. The stats would be different now. But after we did our whole presentation, we said, we had actually added to the application a section that said, are you host, are you a guest? And then it asked for your user ID. We still have that. So we said 12% of the people who apply are our hosts, 35% are guests. The other 53% are people who have never experienced Airbnb before. So this is their very first touch point with Airbnb. And being a platform built on trust, it's really important that that first experience is a good one. And we also pulled some stats around how many people per week our team talked to versus the customer experience team. And this is probably true for a lot of you as well, that your teams talk to more people than almost any other team in the company, right? I would bet if you're B2B, you might even talk to more people than the customer experience team. And we talk to far more people than our community team every single day. So the importance of having this really great candidate experience, it should be focused on as much as we have focus on our customer experience. And the other element of bringing the candidate journey to life was just hiring the team that really believed in it to execute on it. So when we were hiring our initial recruiters, one of the things that we'd always ask them, we'd give them the candidate journey, and we'd give them a frame, and we'd say, how would you design this frame? How would you work with this? And it was really helpful because we don't give much direction. It's kind of, I actually on LinkedIn this morning saw this perfect Steve Jobs quote that's like, you don't hire smart people just to tell them what to do. I might be misquoting, but I thought that was so great. It's totally true. So we'd give them this, this outline, and we'd say, what would you do with this? How would you design the candidate experience knowing this frame? And then we also align them very much with the same vision once they're hired, and we actually train people using the candidate journey. So the outcome, big question, does it work? I added some stats into this deck too, because I know we're at LinkedIn and you guys always have such great stats, and so I wanted to really bring it with the stats slides. So does it work? Well, there's only one group of people who can tell us that, and that's our candidates. So we still spend a lot of time listening to candidates. We basically have 3 different kinds of surveys that we do. The first one is the candidate survey that goes out to anyone who applies but doesn't get an interview, right? So these are people who are rejected at application stage, anyone who doesn't get an interview. And we basically just have an open-ended survey that people can click into. It asks a couple questions, and then it has a text field. So this is kind of it's an opportunity for people to rant or rave, and it's really helpful. So sometimes on that survey, we'll get things like this. I'm really impressed that I heard back on my application within a few days. Even though the answer was a no, the attention was very much appreciated. That's awesome, because we spend a lot of time getting back to people. This is probably the thing we hear the most. People are so appreciative that we get back to them. When we fill a rec, we message everybody who's still in the rec that the rec is filled. We get so much positive feedback just from letting people know what's going on. So this is the first type of thing we get. We sometimes get things like the second comment, basically somebody making a suggestion to us on what could have made their experience better. That's awesome. That's something that we're working on. And we started to see this comment a lot, and we're like, great, OK, we'll get on that. And then sometimes we get things like this. And that's great too, right? I'd rather that they tell us than they tweet it. And also, it gives us a chance to surprise and delight them. So we do take a certain amount of survey results, go through them, and we'll just randomly send people responses. Sometimes if they had a really bad experience, we'll send them a coupon. We can't do it for everyone. We're doing something that doesn't scale. But for the people that we can do it for, it really makes a difference. The second kind of survey that we do is a survey that goes out to everyone who has had an interview and then gets resolved. So anyone who's had an interview and then in the end didn't get an offer, right? The thing I wanted to point out about this survey is we don't ask, there's a few more questions that we ask, these are kind of the highlights, but we don't ask things like, how is the speed of your process, or was your recruiter knowledgeable? We don't ask those things. Those are really important, but we ask outcomes. So one of the things we want people to feel in our interview process is treated with courtesy and respect. So we ask about that because there's a lot of individual elements that make up each of these outcomes, but what's really important is the end result of how people feel. This is actually, I wanted to be fully transparent and show the Q1 results. They're actually a bit lower than our results generally are, and that's, Q1 is very high volume for us, probably plays into it. But so I was treated with courtesy and respect. And then this one that is on the end, I have a more positive impression of the company having gone through their recruiting process. That's really important to us. Like, we want everybody, people come in to Airbnb to interview up here. I mean, they already love us for the most part. So making it an even more positive impression is a pretty incredible thing to do. And to me, that's a great number and a big win for the team. And then the last thing we do is new hire survey. So this is kind of a replica of what we used to do in the lunchroom, right? Every new hire, the first week, on the Friday, the first week that they start, they get a survey. And again, this is just a part of it. There's a lot of things that we ask. But this is really important because these are the people who we actually hired, right? We really want to know what they think. We ask them also for, if you had a competing offer from another company, why did you choose Airbnb? That's one of the key questions that we ask them. Culture comes up as the #1 thing every single time. It's really interesting in that one. It's like culture. Everyone, the wisdom is that people choose managers, but really I think, especially when we look at the San Francisco surveys, people expect to change jobs more frequently now. It's not, people don't necessarily make moves for the managers, so we see it's like culture, growth, team, manager, and down at the bottom is comp. It's really interesting. So anyways, these are just some things around what we ask our new hires. And then we also ask our new hires to tell us how their process was in their own words. And this is super helpful as well, because obviously recruiters alone don't create the candidate experience. We do it in partnership with the hiring teams. And it's a really great motivator, especially for a team like our analytics team that's just constantly hiring. It's a really great motivator to give them this once a quarter and say, here's all the feedback, here's how great you guys are doing and the impact it's having on the people who come in. Or, sometimes we get comments that aren't that great, like my interviewers seem really distracted, it wasn't really well coordinated, I didn't feel like they were asking me deep questions. Things like that we give to the hiring managers as well. And it really helps us guide them in the right direction in terms of partnering on candidate experience. So at the beginning of the presentation, I told you guys a little bit about our growth and where we started. And why it's so important is because you can see from Q1 of 2012 to where we are now, that's how many applicants we've had per quarter. So we didn't know when we started this project how many people we would be impacting. Now, if you can imagine, we had 50,000 applicants in Q1 for 500 jobs worldwide. So the number of people who are impacted by our candidate experience and also, frankly, are rejected far outweighs the number of people who actually get an offer. So I'm really, grateful to Joe for having helped us get it right way back in the beginning in 2012 and make it a positive experience for all of those candidates. Thank you.